before we start, you can find all links and resources discussed in the video description, and please use them to support us. Please also comment, share your opinions and ask any questions. Thank you and enjoy.
I'm going to talk about the journey from Poland to Sweden. A little bit about myself. My name is Anjali. I graduated with class of 2023. A quick disclaimer is that I am born in Sweden, so my application process was a bit different than you guys's. And I am currently working as an AT doctor, which is basically an internship doctor. It's equivalent to the foundation year or stage or this one that you do in Norway. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the journey on how to become a doctor in Sweden. So obviously you go through medical school and you can actually work as a junior doctor in Sweden after semester 10. And that's what I did. I worked as a junior doctor in orthopedics, and you have the title named as junior doctor until you're done and become a specialist, basically. So my journey was that I started as a junior doctor, and then I graduated, and then I applied for internship, and I did actually work as a junior doctor in pediatrics before as well, but that was just more my own choice. I did get the internship after graduation, but I wanted to explore pediatrics first and start my internship later on in the year. And after you're done with your internship, you basically obtain your medical license. And after you have obtained this, you can start working as a specialization doctor. So you specialize in the different medical field that you want to go through, and that's about 5 to 6 years. And when you're done with that, you become a specialist doctor. And then the next step is basically överläkare, which is known as senior doctor. So this is the journey that you would usually do. However, recently Sweden changed the whole medical school program. Back in the days, it used to be 5.5 years. Now it's 6 years. And when you're done with medical school, you will get your medical license right away. And because of this, the whole internship that I'm doing, they basically want to shut it down now, and they're starting a new program called that stands for bastjänstgöring, and it's like basic training. And there are different ways you can do BT, because right now no Swedish medical student is doing it yet, because they still haven't graduated. That's how new this new medical school program is. However, there are many doctors that have studied abroad, for example, Romania, Lithuania, Latvia, because they have to do state exams before graduation, so they receive their license right away. And what I would recommend you guys to do is, after graduation, you should do stage and then the LEC exam, so that you can obtain your license. So basically this path, and then you get your license, and then you can start the BT program, which is going to become this new implemented program in Sweden. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AT and BT. As I've already mentioned, it's equivalent to any type of training program a doctor has after graduation. You have 4 mandatory rotations, and they are listed over here. And basically, depending on where you apply for AT, the program can be either 18 months to 21 months. During the program, you will get a mentor at every different rotation. They will basically act as your supervisor. You can talk to them about personal problems or even like different cases that you really don't know how to handle. And it's really helpful when you work as a doctor. And during AT and BT as well, you have basically like education every week. So you have different workshops, you have different lectures and seminars. You even have a study day. So you are required to have half a study day every week. So in my program, I have a whole study day every second week. And during every single rotation, you have to have a sit-in. And that's basically that they check that everything is going well for you and you're doing it the right way. So a more senior doctor will come with you when you see a patient, and they will look at you on how you conduct the interview, how you do physical exams, what kind of lab tests you want to order, what kind of differentials, and like what the treatment plan is. And usually you pass, and if you don't, you can always do it again. And at the end of AT, you have the AT exam, and you have to pass this in order to get your medical license. So it's kind of like the LEC exam, but it's open questions and not multiple choice. And then we have BAT. BAT is kind of like newly implemented because of the whole thing that they changed the medical school system. And it's kind of the same way. You have, educational seminars, workshops, and lectures. However, during BAT, you will have more examinations, and they don't have the same names. For example, in AT, you have sit-in BAT, they're called like mini-kicks, and different other names, mini-kicks and bedömning, I think. You also have to make a presentation in one of the rotations that you are at. So BAT is quite more, I would say, stricter when it comes to these tests. However, you don't have an exam when you're done with the internship. You can actually have an exam like during the interviews, and that depends on the hospital you're going to work at. And that can be, for example, that you have a case or that you have some type of medical exam. From what I've heard from my colleagues who have done these exams are that they're very basic, medical knowledge. They're not that hard, and usually everybody passes. It's just a way for them to see like how much knowledge you have, since they don't know that since you've studied abroad. And BAT has there's two different programs of BATM. You have the normal one, which is 1 year, and then you have the integrated one, which is 6 months. So the mandatory placements in BAT, whether you do the normal or integrated, is family medicine and some type of acute health care. And it can be any type of, somatic diseases. It just have to be something that's acute in them as well. And then you have the normal BAT, so you do both of the mandatory placements, and then you can do other ones. And that kind of depends on the hospital, what they offer for you, basically. The difference between the normal and integrated is that the integrated one is shorter, and you can basically integrate it into your specialization. So basically, if you already have an idea of where in the medical field you want to be, you can, already contact the departments and talk to them and ask them if they have some type of integrated BAT, because then you just do the mandatory placements, and then you can continue on and go through with the department or medical specialty that you want to go with. Also, if you do the stage in Poland and do the LEC and get your medical license, and you work as a junior doctor, for example, in family medicine, and decide to go in and do BAT, you can use the time you were at doing family medicine as credit, so you can shorten your BAT even more. But it all depends on department to department. But it's a good thing to remember so that you don't work too much for no reason, basically. And here are some other rotations that they have in the normal BAT, that's 1 year. So here I have some different links. I'm going to send the presentation to SASS, so you guys will be able to look through the links. So basically, to be able to work in Sweden and get a work permit, you first have to apply for the job. And I would recommend searching for a job as a junior doctor, for example, because from what I've heard, the whole process of receiving your papers after stage can take a long time. So it's good that you try to do something else in the meantime while you wait. And then once you are employed, your employer will send in the application to apply for the work permit. and SLF will look through the application. SLF is basically the Swedish Medical Association. And then you will receive an email that the process has begun, and then you will have to hand in some other documents and pay a fee. But it says very good in the link here that says work permits. You guys can read more about that. And then if the work permit exceeds more than 3 months, you basically get a residence permit to live in Sweden. The one thing that's important to know when you apply for a job in Sweden is that the certain position that you have applied for needs to be it has to be on the website of the specific hospital. It cannot be like a position that nobody knows about. It has to be out in the open. So, for example, if you do obtain an email to one of the bosses at some type of medical department and you get the job, you have to tell them that they have to put out this position online, because otherwise you might not get your work permit. And this has been confirmed by an employee at the immigration service. The first link is basically a junior doctor in Sweden who has compiled a list of different AT and BT positions all over Sweden. And I think you guys should look through that. It's pretty good. It's in Swedish, however, but it's good to know which, counties offer jobs. It also talks about the process, for example, what time the interviews start and what days they have the exams and it's like that. And it gets updated every year. So save this link to your drive when it's time for you to graduate. Then I have some other links for doctors educated within EU. Because the process looks quite a bit different for you guys, since even though you might not be from EU, you have still studied within EU. So the process is a bit easier, I would say, than if you were studying outside of EU. However, it is quite complicated. And then we have the links for work permits, and then the link for SLF. SLF is a Swedish Medical Association. They basically help you when you're a doctor with different things. It can be legal things, it can be work related, etc. So they're very good to have contact with, and you can actually already become a member at them, which is good. You pay a fee monthly, and they do help you with many things and answer a lot of questions. So I would definitely recommend going through their page and looking through it. I also have a link to apply for AT if anyone is thinking of it. However, I would recommend doing BAT instead because it's much shorter. It's much more easier to get a position in, and AT is slowly, going to be stopped all over Sweden. So because of that reason, I wouldn't really apply for it, especially if you're at the end of your medical years right now. Then we have another link. This is for doctors who have studied outside of EU. However, it's pretty good. You have a link with all the different counties and what kind of practical training and internships that they offer. So I would definitely look through that if you're in 6th year or planning before 6th year and you want to, try to do some clinical rotation in Sweden before you actually decide that that's where you want to go. And then we have another link, which is an introduction course about Swedish healthcare online. It's completely free. You can do it at any time that you want, and it's quite good. It explains the healthcare system and basically how it works in Sweden. And then I have some Swedish language links and also a link for medical Swedish. To be able to work in Sweden, you do have to have a C1 level of Swedish. But I would definitely say that if you know a lot of English, Swedish will not be that hard for you to learn. And then we have obviously the beautiful country of Sweden, with our capital, Stockholm, where I'm from. I think it's a very good idea to live in Sweden. We have very good healthcare. It's largely taxpayer funded. So if like you have to go to the hospital a lot, you will not have to pay for more visits if it exceeds an amount. We have free education. We even get money to study, and the loan we can take out to study is pretty good because the interest is quite low. And most people in Sweden speak English, so you will have no problem going around in Sweden. You always have someone that can help you with translations. We have really good living standards and pretty good work-life balance. We have a lot of regulations and rules that basically have to make sure that doctors have enough rest for the week and enough rest between every single shift. And obviously we have really good family leave policies. So if you want to, settle down in Sweden and start a family, it's a pretty good country to do that in. I would really say that, Sweden is a very multicultural country. We have many different people living in Sweden, and we have a big South Asian group here, a big community. We have a lot of, shops and restaurants. We even have like club events, we have temples, we have even dance schools. So you will still feel quite connected to your culture even though you're living here. The only downside I would say is that it can be quite isolating living here in Sweden. And obviously, as a doctor, when you apply for different internships, it's quite hard to get an internship in one of the big cities because it's quite competitive. So you often end up in a small city. Like me, for example, I live in a village and a very small hospital, and that can be quite boring, I would say. And especially if you come from big cities in India or the Middle East, and it's like a city that never sleeps, you're probably going to be quite bored in Sweden. So you should find a hobby when you move here. That's what I would recommend. However, I would say the Swedish people are quite open. Some of them can be a bit timid, but they eventually loosen up. But just remember that about Sweden before you decide to move here. I also put some links here. Some of them are in Swedish and some of them are in English. That basically has helped me during my work as a doctor. For ward work, for example, I really hated doing consults. So that's like if I have to consult my patient, for example, the infectious disease doctors or a surgeon, I would hate talking to the surgeons because I felt so unprepared. So this link, Consult Guides, is really good and helpful because it literally tells you exactly what you need to have prepared, because these are the questions that they're going to ask you in order to help you with the patient. And then we have two links here, internet medicine och akut internet medicin. It's basically like peer-reviewed articles about different medical diagnoses, and it tells you exactly what kind of tests you need to take and what kind of treatment you need to do. So it's really good if you're in the ER, for example, and you have a patient. And then we have hippocampus. Hippocampus is essentially like ambos, I would say, if anyone is familiar with that. They have different articles, medical articles. They also have old exams from AT, and they also have other exams for doctors that are studying outside of EU. So it's pretty good. It helps you with the information. It also quizzes you on different things, and it's in Swedish. So it's a good way for you to start getting into medical Swedish. So yeah, working as a doctor, I would say, is really fun. I really like the fact that we have these kind of training programs in Sweden, because you can do a lot of dumb things and people will tell you that you're wrong, but it will never be on your back, which I think is quite comforting, especially when you've recently graduated. Since I work in a smaller hospital, often when you're in the ER at night, you're by yourself. You always have a consultant doctor to ask things from, but they're usually at home and they have about 30 minutes to get to the hospital if something happens. But it teaches you a lot of resilience and responsibility, and I'm very happy that I chose to go to a smaller hospital. And usually smaller hospitals like to hire people from different countries because they want to recruit as many people as possible for their hospital. So that's probably where you guys also might end up. And I would definitely recommend to stay in a small hospital, at least for the beginning of your training. You will learn a lot and you'll become a much, much better doctor rather than doing it in a big city. All the medical decisions you take as an AT doctor or a BT doctor are basically not your own. You can obviously make a suggestion, but it will always be the more senior doctors that decide. And I think this is a good thing as well. You can give your input and then they'll tell you if it's right or wrong. It will never ever fall on your back unless you decide to go haywire in the ER, and usually you don't do that as an internship doctor. Okay, I can answer do you recommend applying for ALT right after graduating from Poland? Is it difficult to get in this program? It is quite difficult to get in. So basically, the only reason that Sweden changed the whole medical school system and implemented BT is because of the fact that there were so many people waiting for AT, and there still is. I know people who have been waiting for more than 2-3 years to even get a spot. So because of that, I wouldn't really recommend applying for AT, especially since you guys are graduating now, because AT will, sooner or later not exist anymore. And as I said, it's quite difficult to get into the program. I did get in, but I'm working in a very, very small city. And I'm from Stockholm, but I knew that I wouldn't get it there. So I decided to apply in the whole of the country. And that's how I got it. So yeah. Is it difficult to apply for BT? I wouldn't say that it's difficult in that way. A couple of years ago when BT started, it was quite difficult to apply because there were not enough spots as well. It was kind of the same problem as AT. However, they're working on it now. And obviously with BT, you can choose to do the full one, which is 1 year, or you can choose to do the one that's for 6 months. So depending on how you decide to go through with it, you'll have more options. And obviously, BT will sooner or later be more implemented in the whole country. I would though, advise you guys to study a bit before you apply for BT for the exams or the clinical cases that you have, because they really do look at that now when people apply for BT. Easiest way to get AT, best strategy / approach. I would say either that you apply right after graduation and that you apply to like every city in the country. And basically how you apply is you apply through all the like different counties that we have. And then you can choose like which hospital you would prefer. But some people I know, they do work as junior doctors for about 6 months to 1 year. And then they apply for AT and they sometimes get it closer to home, like 1 to 2 hours away from home. So you can always try that as well. Can you still get a job or clinical rotation if you speak Swedish or Norwegian A2? I think the requirement is that you have to have C1. It's more about like, patient info and those kind of things. Like you have to be able to speak a certain kind of Swedish to be able to work in healthcare, especially as a doctor. I know that if you work as a nurse, it's a different level, but as a doctor, it's quite higher. So I do not think you can work if you only know A2. How easy is it to get into the specialty you want as a foreign doctor? If you go through the paperwork that you do, I don't think it would be a problem. So basically, when you guys graduate from the university, then you can go on to do stage, and then you do the LEC exam. And when you do all of this, you obviously need the paperwork to confirm that you have finished stage, and then you can apply to Sweden, and you can apply to Socialstyrelsen, which basically is our medical association, I guess you could say that, a medical association of care and health. And then you have to apply to them with some paperwork, and basically you can either do it online through their website, or you can do it through an application form. You have to send some type of ID, a valid ID or passport. You have to send any certificates of your medical graduation papers, and also the license as well. And when you go through all of this and you're finally done with the paperwork, you can immediately apply for BAT. And then you can, for example, do an integrated BAT if you know already what kind of specialty you want to do. Sweden has a lack of specialty doctors, so that's why they implemented BAT, because they want to make it easier and quicker for junior doctors to specialize into something, because we have so many junior doctors that are just waiting for a spot. So I would say that they will try to take you in, obviously. What do you recommend for us who don't want to do stage in Poland? I would recommend you to do stage, but if you don't want to do it, you could obviously apply for AT in Sweden, and there are some links for that. I have put them in the presentation, but basically you have to fill in an application form the same way as when you apply for your license. You have to send in your diploma, and then a whole transcript of everything that you've studied, how long, and also passport, and you can send this in to them as well. But I would definitely recommend doing stage because it's much shorter, and then you get into BAT, and BAT is just as good as AT, I would say, because you have the same type of examinations, you have the same education, and you basically do the same thing. It's just that you have a license. That's the only thing that's different from us and BAT doctors. Okay, so there is a mini entrance exam, and it got implemented recently because of the fact that many of the people who are currently doing BAT are only studying abroad. So because of that, the Swedish Medical Board wanted to see how well we know our knowledge. So depending on where you apply for BAT, you either have an exam, like a paper exam, where you basically answer some medical questions, or you'll have some cases, and it would be similar to an OSCE exam or a practical exam, where you have a doll, and then there'll be some type of case, you'll get a report, and then you have to examine the doll and basically give your diagnosis. And from what I've heard, they are quite easy, they're quite basic. It's often something acute or something that can happen in an emergency. So if you read through that, I think you'll be fine. Is AT more educational? Is it worth to do stage in Poland and then doing BAT in Sweden, or is AT more educational? I would say back in the day when BAT first started, the AT was more educational. Because obviously AT has been in Sweden for such a long time, so we have different rules and regulations, and AT has been growing in a different way. However, now I have worked alongside BAT doctors, and we kind of have the same seminars and lectures together, etc. So I would not say that. Obviously, it probably also depends on where you are, and if you decide to do an integrated BAT or a normal BAT. I would definitely do a normal BAT because it's only 1 year, and you have the mandatory rotations and then 2 other. So you get to see more of it. Because essentially AT and BAT are kind of the same thing. You're there to learn, you're there to get a general knowledge in medicine. That's why you have all these different rotations, because after you're done with it, you're kind of a well-rounded doctor. And that's the whole point of it, is to basically make you feel more confident to make your own medical decisions when you finally have the license. I would not say the AT is more educational. Are you being less supervised during BAT compared to AT? No, I wouldn't say that, but I would say that it depends again on if you do an integrated one or a normal one. Because essentially when you are doing these kind of training programs, you're not allowed to make any decisions by yourself. It doesn't matter what kind of decisions there are, at least for where I work, for example, every single patient that comes into the ER that I handle, I have to, double check them with my senior doctor and basically make a treatment plan. It can be a small thing as a UTI. I still have to, talk to the doctor, discuss, and tell them, oh, I want to put them on this kind of antibiotics, for example. So I would not say that you are less supervised during BT. But as I've said, that's why I recommend doing the normal long one and not the integrated one, because I think that in that one, there might be some loopholes. However, when you do BT, like no matter how long it is, you have different goals that you have to attain basically, and your mentor has to make sure that you go through all of them. So in a way, like BT is quite heavily regulated because they need to confirm that you know this, and that. And you can find all about that in the links that I sent about BT. Let's see, last question. If you're an EU citizen, finished med school, like stage in Poland, does the paperwork process very long? I heard that some might wait for a year to have their license accepted in Sweden. From what I've heard, the paperwork can be quite long, especially if you do stage in Poland. And I would recommend that you try to, search for a junior doctor job in the meantime, so that you can work and still gain some experience in Swedish healthcare until you can start doing the BT. That's what I would do, at least, because then you still get to work as a doctor and get the training, and at the same time you're earning money and you're doing something proactive. But yeah, it can take quite long. I have not heard that some people have had to wait a year. I think some people have had to wait maybe minimum 6 months for the papers to come through. But yeah, not a year. But as I've said, you should do something else in the meantime to get a foot into Swedish healthcare. Swedish healthcare has different positions that they post on their websites. However, Sweden also has a system of nepotism. If you know someone or if your parents are doctors, it's quite easier to get into Swedish healthcare. So use your friends who are Swedish, ask them for email addresses if they have any, and try to find, people's emails on LinkedIn, for example, and just try to get a foot in and just apply to as many places as you can. That's my tip. Would you consider it a good idea to try AT internship equivalent in Norway or Denmark instead of the stage? I mean, for example, if you go to Denmark, they have KBU, which is their type of program. And if you do KBU in Denmark and then you want to come to Sweden, then you still have to do BT. So I think that would just lengthen the process even more. So I don't really know if that's a good idea in the beginning to start with. Then maybe if you decide to stay in Denmark, you can do that. But not if you want to go to Sweden. Then you should just do the stage and finish it, or just consider doing AT in Sweden. Norway is different. You can do LIS, and then you can actually, when you're done with LIS, you can still work in Sweden and do your specialization. So yeah, if you want to try for that, obviously you can do that. But Denmark, you will still have to do BT anyways. What if you can't get an underläkartjänst before graduation? Does it make the way harder to get one after graduation? No, I wouldn't say that, because they always need underläkare, and I really don't think you should feel discouraged if you don't get a spot before graduation. I almost didn't get one either when I was applying through like the normal channels. That means that I was going through all the hospitals' websites. The only reason I got my first job as an underläkare, aka junior doctor, is because I had a friend who had an email to the orthopedics boss. So that's how I got my job. It was through contacts. So I would not be discouraged. I know many people who didn't have any junior doctor jobs before graduation, and they're thriving now. Okay, after getting your medical degree stage in Lek, are you even allowed? I read something about you not being allowed to work until you get your paperwork done. Because of the fact that you're waiting for the license, you're not allowed to apply for BAT. However, when you study in Poland, like the Swedish system already knows that in Poland you don't get your license right away, and that you need some type of medical internship to obtain the license. So you can still work as an underläkare in Sweden, and you can also apply for AT as well. And both of these positions do not require you to have a license. Instead, it's about you having graduated and obviously applying for work permit and getting the work permit. That's how you can work. So doing LIS in Norway is the same as AT in Sweden. Do you still have to do BAT after? From what I have read, I'm not entirely sure about Norway because I live in Sweden, but I know that if you do AT in Sweden, you still have to do LIS in Norway. But I'm not really sure how it works on the other way. I do believe that if you do LIS in Norway, you can be able to work as a doctor in Sweden and just go through the next steps. But however, if you do AT in Sweden, you're not allowed. Then you have to go through LIS and that whole process again, because AT is still not recognized in Norway as a medical internship. What if you apply after you got your license from Poland? Can you still apply for underläkare jobs regardless if you applied to check the paperwork in Sweden? If you get your license from Poland, you can still apply to work as a junior doctor in Sweden. They look at your diploma, they look at your passport, and they like the medical license is basically more important because it will get you integrated into the system, and then you can start going through this whole, pathway of becoming a specialist doctor. But before that, if you have your graduation, like if you graduate and you have your diploma, because you have studied in Poland, you can work as a junior doctor in Sweden as well. Because those two educations are equivalent to each other at the moment. And it doesn't matter when you work as a junior doctor, because as I previously said, you can start working as a junior doctor from semester 10. It's just about the paperwork. So you need to fill in some paperwork and send that. You can apply for the job, you can get the job, but then you need to fill in some paperwork to get the license to practice as a junior doctor, basically.
Please tell us what you liked or disliked about the video and ask any questions in the comments. If this video is useful, please give it a like. All links discussed in the video can be found in the description, and please use those links and subscribe to the channel to support us so we can keep producing content. Thank you, and maybe watch another video.